In today's video, we're going to be talking about auto rifles and we're going to be showing off a couple of things. One, we're going to be kind of showing the damage fall off numbers for some of these higher performing autos. And then we're going to compare those numbers to some other weapons like pulses and hand cannons that in the past auto rifles really couldn't compare with at these longer ranges. And then we're going to talk about how do you play against auto rifles, especially in a meta where auto rifles are a lot stronger now. It's important to figure out how to play against these guns because they can really melt you really quick. And then lastly, we're going to talk about our autos meta right now. And I think you'll be interested in my answer because without giving away too much, I think it's close. It's close, but we're going to talk about it. Jumping into our damage fall off numbers for auto rifles, and just looking, we're going to be comparing everything to the Amit AR2, which is a 450 RPM auto that's craftable and sits at about 91 range, depending on how you craft it. But I would agree, I would say this is probably the best way to craft it. And as you can see, the damage fall off start is 37.5 meters more or less. And so pretty far at this point. And then you have Abyss Defiant, which is 360 RPM, but hits a little bit harder at 39. So basically very close to 40 meters on some of these autos. You know, Quicksilver Storm and Centrifuge, which are going to be quite a bit lower since they have basically half the range on that end. But again, they have other things going for them that still make them quite potent. And this is still much better range value that they have than they would have had pre-Season of the Witch. But if we look now we're going to talk about why autos are so dangerous right now. And it was because previously they couldn't compete with weapons like hand cannons and pulses because at those higher ranges, your TTK would go up because with your autos you just experience such intense damage drop off that you couldn't challenge these hand cannons, these pulses. But now, as you can see on the screen here, we have No Time to Explain and Igneous Hammer on the screen. And as you can see, No Time to Explain experiences damage drop off at 35 meters. So exactly 2 meters less than the Amit AR2. Okay, so that's pretty surprising to me in my opinion. But obviously we know also No Time and high impact pulses received a lot of nerfs recently. But let's talk about Igneous Hammer. Igneous Hammer is going to be coming back very shortly here. A lot of people are going to be going for this 120 hand cannon. And as you can see on this Igneous Hammer that I kind of put together here is like my quote unquote god roll, I'm sitting at 100 range with keep away active. And that brings us at 40 meters before we start experiencing drop off, or 40 and a half, I should say, just to be specific. But compared to the Amit AR2, that's only 3 meters difference. Only 3 now between the Igneous Hammer and Amit AR2. But even look here, the optimal time to kill an Amit is 0.8 versus 120's 1.0. And so if you're going toe to toe with an Amit versus Igneous is going to lose if it's just straight up. And so I think this is where autos are really coming in, and a lot of people are really getting caught off guard, challenging auto rifles versus in the past you would hear someone using auto rifle and it was almost like a meme, like you just challenge because you know they're probably not a very good player, because obviously why would they be using auto rifle? That is not the case anymore. Autos can now have always had a really good TTK, but now they can hit at some insane ranges and challenge some of these higher performing, what used to be higher range weapons. So now we've kind of put in perspective how range is really helping auto rifles right now. And I want to talk about how to play against auto rifles because there was a point in time where we were in an auto rifle meta where weapons like Gnawing Hunger with Kill Clip were just destroying in the Crucible. And what I found during that time, because even though you see this gameplay with me using an auto rifle, I'm personally not a big fan of using things like auto rifles or SMGs. I'm just like a hand cannon stand till the end. Is if you're one of those people that wants to keep using your hand cannon or your pulse, the way you compete against these weapons is by not getting caught in the open and playing your cover and being able to effectively peek shot. That is the key, because basically, because it's a full auto weapon, you have to be able to break up those shots with the cover. So you're gonna make sure you're not just out in the open taking all these shots, because you're gonna get grinded out by these autos, especially at the ranges they hit now. Because if you'll notice from the clips, all these people that I'm frying, they're just caught out in the open. They're not playing near cover, and that is what's getting them killed. And I think a lot of people, again, aren't used to auto rifles doing this much damage at these ranges, and it's catching a lot of people off guard. And so again, the best way, play near cover, play those peak shots to kind of break up that damage from autos, and that's what's going to allow you to compete with these weapons, because honestly, auto rifle metas can be really hard to play in because it requires a lot of discipline. You have to be constantly playing close to cover, constantly kind of assessing your surroundings and not getting caught out in the open, which isn't always easy to do as we move around the map. And some maps will cater better to that than others. And so it's something to keep in mind as you're experiencing auto rifles more and more out there in the wild in the Crucible. Now, are we in an auto rifle meta? I think we're close. I think we're really, really close. I think autos are really, really good right now. And I think the only thing keeping them in check right now really is the fact that like things like Immortal and SMGs are still really, really strong and still hitting at really far ranges. So we'll see once Bungie does some additional adjustments to SMG's recoil in favor of hopefully bringing down people's range to compensate. And we'll see if that brings SMGs down. But I feel like if they bring SMGs down that much, autos are going to skyrocket even more. So I feel like a lot of players that like the SMG style, they'll probably like the auto rifle style. It's just going to be a longer range SMG in some ways. But I don't think we're quite in an auto rifle meta yet. It's really close though. It's really close. And if you were to watch Trials Report or look at Trials Report, Amit, the first weekend was the highest used weapon. And so I may eat my words on this, but like it could be literally a couple weeks before we end up in an auto rifle meta. The interesting thing it will be to see is if Bungie adjusts or nerfs the range on autos at all. I'm not sure what their ideal range they want to see is. If I recall correctly, they had said they wanted to keep a close eye on autos because I feel like now autos are starting to perform in the higher end lobbies, which before Bungie themselves stated that autos performed well in lower skill lobbies, but as you go into the high end skill brackets, they would kind of drop off. I don't think that's the case anymore, and so I think that might get them nerfed. Not because I want them to get nerfed. People always get mad at me for saying nerf, but I think when Bungie sees that kind of data, that is what's going to lead them to maybe make some adjustments to autos. But let me know in the comments below, are you using an auto rifle right now? And two, how do you think it sits in the meta? Do you think it should be nerfed? Do you like where the sandbox is at right now? How are you feeling about auto rifles in the current sandbox? And I'll catch you guys in the next one.